There's an old adage to say that when your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And I think that's exactly the situation that we're running into with the latest statement from Mr. Pokke and the amount of backlash that he's gotten and the amount of drama that's kind of being stirred up in the space as a result of it. And I want to talk about why, one, that's just factually incorrect, but two, talk about some of the nuances around that and where some situations it may be beneficial and helpful, but overall is still not going to be the meta. And I also want to talk about why everything is kind of raining down a little bit too hard on Mr. Pokke, and I think he's getting a little bit too much flack for the statement that he's made. But before we dive into all of that, shout out to this video sponsor. Gamers, will you answer the call and help save the world from demon spawn, skinwalkers, and horrible armies of the undead and save the world of Teleria? Raid Shadow Legends is a turn-based RPG and champion builder with numerous types of content. Campaigns, dungeons, raid bosses, PvP, and more can all be accessed for free in this game. Personally, I've been trying to clear the faction war as of late, and it's been pushing my account in a completely new direction. I think Raid's going a little crazy right now because in their latest update, they're giving a ton away for free. If you sign up with my link in the description, you'll get the free epic champion Zargala on your account after completing the tutorial for the game. And then after reaching account level 15, you'll get the supporter Hugo, who's a great cleanser and debuffer for your account. And now these are two great epic champions, but what about some legendaries? Now, when you start a new raid account, it's going to trigger the Alice Chase event, where after logging in for 7 days, you'll get the free legendary champion Alice the Wanderer on your account. But that's not all. For the first time ever, Raid is giving away a free legendary Void champion for new Raid players. From March 5th to March 31st, you can use the code Supreme6 to get another legendary champion, Supreme Gallic, on any new Raid account. In partnership with Raid, I also started a new Raid account and a channel that you can find in the link in the description. Now, a lot of people ask me, Connor, how can I support the channel? How can I support you? Downloading Raid and giving it a try is a great way how you can help support me and what I do here. Sign up with my link in the description or in the pinned comment to this video to get your free champions today. So of course, going back into it here, Mr. Pokke had this clip where he was talking about how it is meta on YouTube to shit on Honkai Star Rail and other Hoyoverse games because it is going to garner more views and more attention on your YouTube channel. The justification for that it gives is that if Honkai Star Rail had been created by another game developer, if it was from Nintendo, if it was from Kuro, or whoever else it could have been, that people shitting on the game on YouTube wouldn't be getting as many views if Honkai Star Rail had been created by Nintendo instead. One, that's an unproductive and unhelpful statement that just serves to obfuscate and kind of run interference for a company and for genuine feedback that comes into place. But two, it's just factually incorrect. Nintendo was a poor choice of Mr. Pokke because actually, in fact, Nintendo's just recently been getting shat on for its treatment of the Pokemon franchise, and with its recent titles, a lot of people being really disappointed, not innovating on the genre enough, or in the recent game announcement that just the visuals look very unappealing and uninspired. They've been getting a lot of criticism for how they've been developing their game. It's not like Nintendo is immune from criticism. What he's trying to say there is that if Nintendo had made Honkai Star Rail, well then it wouldn't be getting any flack. But there's plenty of things for Honkai Star Rail to be criticized for. And a great example of that was the recent case of Casterus, where effectively the entire gacha community rallied around this idea that Casterus's passive that was leaked is such a predatory practice and something that should not be implemented into the game. It was such a feel-good moment that the entire community had rallied around and hoping that we can bring some kind of change to the title in this way. That didn't happen because it was made by Hoyo. That happened because it was a crappy practice. So we got to make sure that we're not obfuscating legitimate feedback and criticism to a game by just hand-waving all the feedback away by saying, oh, it's just meta shit on it from a YouTube views perspective. Also because that just factually is incorrect. If we look at Tectone's channel, probably known as one of the biggest kind of Genshin haters at the very least, a very dejected creator from it, but he's not the only one. He pulls pretty good average views. By no means is any of this shade. He does way more than me, everybody. Like, look, 100,000, 32,000, 50,000, 101,000, 91,000, 94,000, 90,000, 35,000. Really good, consistent views on his channel, but he's overly critical. He's not pulling in the crazy numbers that a lot of these other content creators are getting more regularly on their own videos. The first one I wanted to bring up is Doro44. We can take a look at a couple of his recent Genshin Impact videos and his positive content for it. C6ing characters, 324,000. C6ing everyone, 631,000. Natlan's quest ended like this, 131,000. Insane amount of views from a creator who's just been consistently positively playing and reinforcing this game. The same, even more so, can be said for creators like Xiox, 158,000 in the last week, 62,000, 421,000, 400,000, 229,000 views that are going into this game for somebody who's kind of positively reinforcing this idea. Because as much as we want to say it's meta to hate on this topic, it's meta to hate on these games for views, the numbers don't actually bear out. And that's because people love positive reinforcement. People want their pre-existing ideas about a game or something that they're enjoying just to be reinforced and not to be constantly challenged. So when somebody's coming into this and they're crapping on Genshin Impact, you're more likely to get a negative response in return than a positive one in terms of your overall viewership and engagement. And that's simply because Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact, from a raw numbers and player-based perspective, far eclipse a lot of these other gacha titles. So even if you are trying to farm the hate on it, you're really just preaching to the choir of other players in a smaller pool. So broadly speaking, going to hurt your numbers overall in turn. Not only does it then change the perception of the other viewers or players in the space not wanting to engage with your content, but then it's also going to put you on bad terms with the company themselves. There's a lot of these companies, particularly Chinese companies, that don't want to engage with creators who are constantly shitting on their titles or their IPs. And so they will often blacklist them. The Hoyoverse blacklist is not a new idea that we've never heard before. People have talked about this. And so by going out and being overly critical on this, it's not actually garnering more views that outweigh any potential contracts or incentives by getting into their program. So from a raw numbers on a video's perspective, and we're talking about losing any kind of incentives from the companies themselves, how in any way, shape, or form is this meta in terms of content creation? The reality is it's not. Now, there is a small area of nuance where I think we can say it is helpful and it's definitely going to be beneficial, but really it's just preaching to the choir. And a case example of that is with somebody like Saint Tontus. Now, Saint Tontus is a newer creator on the scene, friend of mine, great dude, really love this guy. So by no means is any of this kind of harping on him, but I think what Saint has done has been really effective. Saint, being a new creator coming onto the scene, has been out there vehemently defending and advocating for Wuthering Waves constantly, and advocating for the characters, talking about the game, the combat, the world exploration, the campaign stories, everything along with it. Part of that process has been shitting on things like Hoyoverse, like for example, how Hoyoverse ruined gacha here. A video like that will be effective for his own community because he's not advocating or trying to reach out to the Hoyoverse community. He's not trying to win them over to his side. This is something to reinforce some of the ideas and practices of his own community. And so while it may help foster that engagement with them, it's not necessarily going to help from an overall growth perspective, simply because the player base just is not as large as these other titles. So he's more likely to piss people off than he is to win them over to his side. Reinforcing and pandering to a player base who already likes and enjoys something is always going to garner more support than actively trying to tear something down, especially when the thing you are supporting and liking is much larger in terms of the raw numbers, overall player base, and how they're engaging with the community. That is still the reality. As much as I still think Wuthering Waves is superior to Genshin in pretty much every way, that doesn't change the fact that there are way more Genshin players. The reason why I'm talking about this from a macro perspective here as well, in terms of raw numbers and viewership, is because no one's making the statement that hating on Hoyoverse is the meta for all of YouTube and going to get you all amazing views across the entire site in all verticals. I mean, what Xiox manages to pull in is definitely very competitive in terms of a lot of other niches, but it's not necessarily going to push you to the front of the entire website by doing this. We're talking about what kind of views are you pulling in from the gacha community in our sphere, or how I like to think about it, our vertical of content. So let's just be clear here. It's cut and dry. It's not meta. It's not going to do that. Can it help you with preaching to the choir and help with community engagement? Sure, but it is a far cry from meta, and it's not going to act like to cross that barrier. I do want to address one other thing here that we need to be a little bit more reasonable about as the gacha community, and that has been kind of like the treatment of Mr. Pokke in this circumstance, and I think he's gotten way more aggro in this situation than I think is warranted. The statement in and of itself that hating on Hoyoverse is just the meta in terms of views online is not something that Mr. Pokke originated. He didn't come up with that idea. That's not the first time that thought's come through. A lot of the creators that I've mentioned already previously, Ziox, Doro44, and Brand Online are also people who've said similar things in the past, that it's just engagement farming to get more viewership. So I think it's unfair to kind of view Mr. Pokke as the avatar and the person that's perpetuating this entire idea. Does that make him immune to criticism? Absolutely not. But I think we should be focusing on the idea and less so on him. And I think the problem here is there is kind of a reason he's getting this flack, and it is because a bit of his track record. Anybody who's engaged in the space for any amount of time has been familiar with some of Mr. Pokke's takes over the last few months, starting all the way back in January, whether it be the gacha players are greedy and stupid in Honkai Star Rail for trying to pull in every character, or power creep is only a problem if you're greedy and stupid because you're not pulling correctly, and it really coming across as very anti-player and pro-corpo. And this has primed a lot of the community to come at Mr. Pokke and to combat him on these takes. And this is just another example that can really be seen as pro-corpo. It can really be seen as a way to obfuscate from the feedback and the criticism that Honkai Star Rail and Hoyoverse have been rightly getting for this passive on Casterus, but it way smoke screens any of the feedback as invalid because it's popular to do so. So while we can't go down that path, we need to also be careful just to kind of separate it from the person himself, especially somebody like, I don't think Mr. Pokke needs to be removed from the gacha community. I don't think he's somebody that needs to be canceled, even though I don't think he's being canceled. I do think he's getting a lot of flack right now, but I don't think he's being canceled. So we just need to make sure that we're kind of measuring attacking the idea and less attacking the creator. Right now, Mr. Pokke, whether or not he likes it or anyone else likes it, he's got aggro on him. It's like he's got 1 star in Grand Theft Auto, and the second he does anything else, he's gonna jump straight up to 5 stars and have literally the whole gacha police on his back. So while it's not fair that he got clip chimped a little bit, somebody went out, took this small segment of a stream of 6 hours and this 1-minute clip that now spurred on this whole discussion, and he's become the outlet for it. The reality is he's got aggro, and he's gonna need to take a little bit of a cooldown. So while I don't think that's fair, I don't think it's justified, I don't think it's fair for somebody to have to watch every single thing that they say every single minute of the day, because just in case somebody wants to take it and twist it into pro corpo and now become the outlet for this, the reality is, based on what's happened over the past few months, that's the case. My suggestion to Mr. Pokke, if you do happen to watch this, he probably won't, but if you do happen to watch this, is just you need to go on cooldown for a little bit and maybe just take it easy on some of the hot takes, or I think you're just gonna keep the aggro on. You're gonna keep the 5 stars up. You need to go into hiding for a little bit and get some of those stars off. Or I think to balance it out is vocalize some of your criticisms of the game. I think there is a, whether or not intentional or justified, a perception of Mr. Pokke right now that he doesn't actually have anything critical about Honkai Star Rail. That may be true. Maybe that's his perception in this case. But the reality is, if you have no criticism for Honkai Star Rail for what's been going on in the title, everyone of course is going to think you're pro-corpo. I don't think there's any way around that. That doesn't justify the response. I don't think it justifies people going as hard as they are on him, but I understand that people are so quick to jump to some of those conclusions. So maybe vocalize some of your feedback, vocalize some of those things that you do disagree with in the game, or put it out there to be a little more public with it, and not necessarily always double and triple down on your takes, but be able to clarify them a little bit more. But also in this case, you're just wrong. It's not a meta take. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you agree with Mr. Pokke's take? Do you think it's meta, or do you think all of this is like, it's just a silly take, but a lot of this has been blown out of proportion? Let me know what you think. I don't want people just down there shitting on Mr. Pokke. I want to be very clear about this. I want to address the idea a little bit more. I just threw in a couple little bit extra notes from Mr. Pokke himself. Maybe we go on cooldown. Let's get that aggro off. Let's remove some of those debuffs for a little bit. All right, but that's going to be it for me, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Sign up with my link in the description or in the pinned comment to this video to get your free champions today.